The rain pours down in sheets. Jessie runs down a dark alley. Water runs from her hair down the back of her neck. Her clothes cling to her body. She can't see the road, only the glint of wet asphalt in the light of the few streetlights. The rumble of an engine can be heard behind her. She turns and sees two headlights following closely behind. Her heart pounds somewhere in her throat. Her legs give way. She runs out onto a better-lit street and almost falls. And then she sees a car, a black sedan, just stopped at the curb. In her head, clouded by fear, a simple picture forms. A street, night, a car at the curb, a taxi. She doesn't examine the model, doesn't look for the checkered pattern. She sees salvation. Jessie makes one last lunge, grabs the back door handle. The door opens. She falls inside onto the cool seat. She slams the door. The interior is quiet and dry. It smells clean and somehow foreign, like a new hotel. "Faster!" she breathes, her voice hoarse. "Please go quickly! That car over there! It's behind me! Get out of here!" She presses her face against the cold glass. The headlights behind her are already turning onto this street. The man behind the wheel doesn't turn around. He looks up and glances at her in the rearview mirror. Just for a second. His face is stony, expressionless. There's no surprise, no fear, not even curiosity in his eyes. His gaze slides from her reflection to the headlights behind him. He stares at the road ahead. His right hand, clad in a black leather glove, rests on the gear shift. He asks no questions. He says nothing. He simply shifts gears. The movement is crisp and fast. Then his foot presses smoothly but firmly on the gas pedal. The car takes off almost silently, but so abruptly that Jessie sinks back into the seat. The street outside the window turns into a stream of light and shadow. She looks back again. Those headlights are trying to speed up, but they're already lagging behind. After a few turns, they disappear completely in the torrents of rain. He doesn't ask for directions. He just drives, quickly, but without fuss. He turns off the main streets. The car is silent. Only the muffled sound of the engine, the patter of raindrops on the roof, and her own ragged breathing. Jessie isn't looking at the road. She's closed her eyes. When she opens them again, the city lights are no longer outside the window. The car is driving along a narrow road among the trees. The rain is still pounding the roof. After a while, the car slows. Tall gray gates appear in the headlights. The man presses a button on an inconspicuous remote control on his sun visor. The gates slide silently open. The car pulls inside. They drive along a straight path through the garden. The headlights catch glimpses of neat bushes and rocks. A house appears ahead, low, wide, made of dark stone and glass. Dim yellow lights glow in the windows. The car stops in front of the house's sagging door. The engine stalls. Complete silence ensues, broken only by the steady sound of rain. Jessie comes to. She looks out the dark window at an unfamiliar house. Then she looks at the driver. "Where are we?" Her voice rings out in the silence. "I didn't give you an address. I just needed to get further out of town." The man slowly turns in his seat to look at her. His face is now clearly visible in the streetlight. Clear features, an unmoving expression. He looks at her intently, searchingly. "First of all," he says, his voice even and quiet, "I'm not a taxi driver." He pauses briefly, letting her understand. "Second, you got into the wrong car." Another pause. Jessie freezes, the realization of her mistake slowly filling her. "And third," he continues, "I did as you asked. We broke away." He looks at her, waiting. His eyes don't move. "Now I want to know," he says. "Who are you? And what really just happened?" The silence in the car grew thick after his words. His voice was even, non-threatening, but it held such finality that Jessie stopped trembling. The fear of being chased was replaced by another, colder feeling, the realization of her situation. She was sitting in a stranger's car somewhere outside the city. He waits. He doesn't move. His gloved hands rest on the steering wheel. He simply looks at her, his gaze demanding an answer. Jessie takes a deep breath. The air in the car is cool and clean. I didn't know," she says quietly. "The car was on the side of the road. You thought it was a taxi," Jean finishes for her. "I get it." He looks away, staring ahead at the rain on the windshield. Then he turns back to her. "You didn't answer my question." His calm is infectious. Jessie sits up straight in her seat, pushing her wet hair away from her face. "My name is Jessie Okafor." He nods slightly, as if simply noting the fact. "Jin," he introduces himself briefly. "Now the second question. You were being chased. Why?" Jessie looks at her hands. They're still shaking, but less. "It was a guy. At the old docks. I was meeting a friend there. He was sitting at the next table. At first, he just smiled. Then he came over when my friend went to the bathroom. He said I reminded him a lot of his ex-girlfriend. Or rather, he was sure of it. He called me by a different name, Sarah. She falls silent, collecting her thoughts. Jean doesn't rush her. He just listens. I told him my name wasn't Sarah and that I didn't know him. He didn't listen. He said I was doing it on purpose to annoy him. He became louder. The waiter reprimanded him. Then he went on to his table, but didn't stop staring. I decided to leave. My friend was late. I went out alone and walked to the metro. After a couple of minutes, I realized he was following me, walking quickly. I sped up. He did too. Then he started shouting that name, Sarah. He ran. I ran. It was pouring rain, no one around. Then I saw your car. She falls silent. Remembering it is as unpleasant as experiencing it. Was he drunk? Jean asks. His voice is still emotionless. I think so, but more than that. His gaze was unhealthy. He really believed that I was that girl. Do you have your phone with you? Is it okay? Jessie feels in the pocket of her jeans and takes out her phone. The screen lights up. It's okay, but I didn't call the police. I just ran. You did the right thing, Jean says unexpectedly. In a situation like this, you need to distance yourself first. Everything else comes later. He opens his door. Cold, damp air rushes into the car. Get out! You're soaking wet! Jessie hesitates for just a second. There's no point in sitting in the car any longer. She opens her door and steps out into the rain. It's not as heavy anymore, but cold drops immediately begin to trickle down her collar. Jean is already standing at the massive dark wood front door. He places his palm on the side panel. There's a soft click, and the door slides open. He lets her go first. Jessie goes inside. The hallway is spacious, with a stone floor. The air is warm. A single sconce glows on the wall, illuminating the minimalist space. A shoe rack, a mirror in a simple frame. Nothing superfluous. The shoes are here, Jean says, pointing to the floor. He takes off his own shoes and places them on the shelf. Jessie, with wet hands, takes off her sneakers. They leave a wet mark on the floor. He walks further into the living room. Jessie follows him. The room is large. One wall is almost entirely glass, but now behind it, there is only pitch-black darkness and a reflection of the interior. In the center of the room is a wide sofa and two armchairs around a low table. In the background is a fireplace. Small flames burn inside, simulating a flame. The room is warm and very quiet. Jean takes off his wet jacket and hangs it over the back of one of the chairs. Underneath, he wears a simple black pullover. Sit down, he says, pointing to the sofa. I'll get you a towel. Jessie sits carefully on the edge of the sofa. The material is soft, cool. She looks around. The room is devoid of photographs or knickknacks. There are books on the shelves, but not many. Everything looks as if it's rarely lived in. Jean returns with a large, soft towel. He hands it to her. Thank you, Jessie says, and begins drying her face and hair. It's a simple act, but it helps her come to her senses. Jean sits down in the chair opposite him. A low table sits between them. You were incredibly unlucky today, he says. And incredibly lucky. I figured that out, Jessie says, dropping the towel onto her lap. If it hadn't been for your car, if it hadn't been for my car, you would have either been soaking wet in the alley, or you would have run into that man. Neither option was good. But you got into a stranger's car. It could have ended worse. I figured that out too, she says. And for the first time, there's something other than fear in her voice. A slight bitterness. It was a bad choice. But I had no other options at that moment. I couldn't run anymore. I know, Jean says. You acted out of necessity. Just like I did. What do you mean? I mean, I acted out of necessity too. You jumped into my car and they chased you. I had two options. Throw you back out on the street, or help you. The first option led to unnecessary problems. The second seemed more logical. So you helped me out of logic, Jessie asks. Out of logic and understanding of the situation. Sometimes helping isn't an act of kindness. It's simply the most rational decision in the given circumstances. He says it as simply as if he were discussing the weather. There's no vanity or desire to appear noble in his words. There's only fact. Jessie looks at him, trying to understand. Now what's the most rational solution? She asks. Jean looks at her wet jeans, at the towel in her hands. The most rational solution is not to let you out back into the night like this. The rain hasn't stopped. You're stressed. That person, if he's even half sane, has already given up. But if not, he could be circling around where you got lost. Searching. He pauses. You can stay here until the morning. It's safe. In the morning, I'll take you where you need to go. Jessie is silent. She looks at the fire in the fireplace, at the reflection in the huge window, where they are both visible, the wet girl and the calm stranger in the dark, quiet room. Chance brought her here. Necessity compels him to offer his help. Logic tells her he's right. But something else, deeper than fear, quietly whispers that she truly doesn't want to go back out into the night. Okay, she finally says. See you in the morning. Thank you. Jean gets up and leaves the living room. Jessie sits on the couch, wrapped in a towel. She listens to sounds, his footsteps on the stone floor somewhere in the back of the house, the quiet clatter of dishes. A few minutes later, he returns, holding a small tray. He places a tray on the low table between them. On it are two tall, dark ceramic mugs. Steam rises from them. Next to them lies a small white box and two small spoons. Cocoa, says Jean, sitting back in his chair. It's hot, and there are marshmallows. He opens the box. Inside are white and pink marshmallows. He takes one pink one and drops it into his mug. The marshmallow slowly begins to melt on the surface. Jessie carefully picks up her mug. It's heavy, smooth. She wraps her palms around it, and the warmth immediately penetrates her cold fingers. She inhales the scent. Sweet, chocolatey, childish. So unexpected in this austere place. She picks up a white marshmallow and dips it into the drink. Do you drink cocoa often? She asks, just to say something. No, Jean replies, but I have a niece. She comes here sometimes. This is for her. In situations like these, a sweet, hot drink is just right. Jessie lifts the mug to her lips and takes a small sip. The drink is piping hot, sweet, and very thick. The taste is smooth and enveloping. It's good, she says sincerely. I'm glad, he replies. They drink in silence. The silence is less tense now. It's filled with the soft sound of the fire in the fireplace, the barely audible crackle, and the soft sips. Jessie watches her marshmallow transform into a sticky foam on the surface of the cocoa. She deftly catches it with a spoon and pops it into her mouth. The sweet vanilla flavor melts on her tongue. I always thought you had to set it on fire, she says suddenly. Jean looks at her, raising an eyebrow. Marshmallows. In the movies, they always show them roasting them over a fire. I always just dropped them in a cup. Like I'm cheating. The corner of Jean's mouth twitches. It's almost imperceptible. It's not cheating, it's effective. Why go through the motions when you can make it easier? Do you always think that way? Jessie asks, taking another sip. Almost always, he nods. Complex paths often lead to the same results as simple ones, but at greater cost. She considers his words. So, letting a pussy in a soaking wet stranger into your home was the easy way out? He looks at her directly now, and something like a faint spark of interest appears in his eyes. Under the circumstances, yes. The alternatives were clearly worse. The risk is minimal. You're not dangerous. Thank you for the compliment, Jessie says, and unexpectedly, she smiles. It's a small, reserved smile, but it's real. Jin sees that smile. He looks at her for a few seconds, studying her face, which is now relaxed and younger looking. Then he looks down at his mug. You look less scared now. That's good. Fear is a bad advisor. And cocoa is good, Jessie counters, a slight, barely perceptible playfulness in her voice. Jin looks up at her again, and now he too allows himself a small, barely noticeable smile. It doesn't change his face much, but it softens his features. Perhaps. At least it's warming. Jessie finishes her cocoa. She feels warmth spreading throughout her body, chasing away the last of her shivers. She places the empty mug on the tray and stretches. Fatigue washes over her in a pleasant wave. Jin finishes too. He leans forward to place his mug next to her. At this point, Jessie decides to help and reaches over to straighten the tray, which is slightly uneven. Their hands meet. Her fingers, already warm from the mug, touch his hand. He pushes the tray in. She adjusts it. The contact lasts no more than a second. Less, but it exists. Each to their own side of the table. You need to rest, Jin says, his voice a little quieter than usual. You're barely standing. Jessie nods. She can't argue with that. The day's emotions, the adrenaline, then the warmth and safety, all of it weighing on her eyelids now. Yeah, I guess, she agrees. The touch had already faded from the skin, but the memory of it remained somewhere on the periphery of consciousness, quiet and uninvited. Silence hangs in the air after his words about sleep. Jessie doesn't want to move. The warmth of the fireplace, the soft sofa, the lingering sweet taste in her mouth. All of this creates a sense of cocoon, the peace she so desperately needs right now. But her mind is still awake. Are you always this tidy? She asks, looking around the room. Tidy? Jean asks. Yes. Everything in its place. Nothing out of place. Even the cocoa was within reach. Jean turns his head slightly, looking at the shelves of books, at the clean surface of the mantelpiece. Order is necessary, he says simply. It makes life easier. When everything is in its place, you don't have to waste time looking for it. You don't have to make unnecessary decisions about little things. That sounds exhausting, Jessie notes, always monitoring every detail. It's not control. It's a system, he corrects. A system saves energy, especially if you live alone. He pauses, looking at the fire. It used to be different, he says suddenly, his voice even, without intonation, as if he's stating a fact about a stranger. When I was a kid, our house was always noisy. People came and went. My mother tried to restore order, but it was impossible. Things were constantly getting lost. There was a lot of chaos. I didn't like it. I didn't understand why I wasted energy on chaos that could be avoided. Jessie listens without interrupting. She pulls her legs under her, clasping her knees with her hands. Where is your family now? My mother lives in Busan. My sister lives abroad. We rarely see each other. He says this without regret. Everyone has their own life, their own system. And your system is this house? Silence and order? It's part of the system. He nods. Predictability. It gives a feeling of stability. He doesn't say security, but Jessie hears that undertone in his words. She understands that for him, order isn't just convenience. It's foundational. Mine's a complete mess, Jessie says, her slight smile returning. There's always something out of place in my apartment. Books on the floor, a cup of half-drunk tea on the windowsill, a jacket hanging over the back of a chair because I'm too lazy to hang it in the closet. And you're comfortable like that? Jean asks, and there's genuine curiosity in his voice. Yes, this is my chaos. I navigate it. It doesn't stress me out. What stresses me out is the opposite, when you need everything to be perfect, like in a library or a museum. She takes a sip from her now-cold mug, just to keep her hands occupied. I'm studying, she continues, to be an architect, or rather finishing my master's degree. So, in my chaos, there are always blueprints, cardboard models, and coffee. Lots of coffee. My desk is a whole separate universe, not to be touched. I know where every ruler and pencil is, but from the outside it looks like a disaster. Jin listens, his gaze attentive. An architect, he repeats. You create order from the start. You think through every detail so that other people can live in this space later. Perhaps create their own chaos. I've never thought of it that way. Jessie is surprised. Yeah, I guess so. We create a system, a framework, and what's inside is up to those who will live there. As you said, their own system. So we're talking about the same thing, Jin notes, just from different ends of the process. I support the system. You design its foundations. She considers his words and feels a strange satisfaction from the parallel. He no longer seems so alien and unattainable. His logic makes sense. The conversation peters out, but this time the silence isn't oppressive. It's natural, filled with warmth and a slight weariness. Jessie stares at the fire in the fireplace. The flames flicker, casting soft, dancing shadows on the walls and ceiling. She hears the soft crackling, the ticking of a large clock somewhere on the other side of the house, and Jean's even breathing. He sits in a chair, his head thrown back. His eyes are half closed, but he's not sleeping. He's simply resting. His face in the dim light looks calm, without the usual tense concentration. Jessie feels her body growing heavy. Her eyelids grow warm and heavy. She tries to fight sleep, but it's useless. Safety and warmth are powerful sleep aids. Her thoughts begin to blur, images from the day blending with the present moment. Headlights in the rain, stern eyes in the mirror, the taste of cocoa, the hard texture of his hand when he accidentally touches her. She makes a final effort to look at him. He sits motionless, watching the fire. His presence doesn't disturb her. Instead, it's like a wall against which no external danger can penetrate. Jessie's head slowly tilts to the side. She finds a comfortable position, leaning against the soft back of the sofa. Her arms weaken and fall to her knees. Her breathing becomes deeper, more even. She doesn't notice how her eyes finally close. Her consciousness drifts, breaking away from reality and sinking into the warm, dark waters of sleep. The last thing she feels is the softness of the pillow under her cheek and the distant, soothing sound of the fire. She falls asleep, completely, deeply. Her body finally releases all the tension of the long, terrible night. Jin opens his eyes. He hears a change in her breathing. He looks across the table. Jessie is asleep. Her posture is awkward but relaxed. One hand rests on the sofa cushion, the other on her stomach. Her face is finally completely calm. All the wrinkles of worry have smoothed out. In the firelight, her skin seems warm and soft. Her wet hair is almost dry now, fluffing up in light, dark curls at her temples. He watches her for a few minutes, without moving. He thinks. He thinks about the chain of coincidences that brought this stranger to his house, about her fear, which was so real, about her smile, which was so unexpected, about her simple words about the chaos on the table, and about the system in architecture. He analyzes the risks. They are minimal. She poses no threat. Her story is plausible. Her behavior does not indicate hidden intentions. She is simply a tired, scared girl who got into the wrong car. But there's another factor, a less rational one. Feeling. The feeling that he did the right thing. Not just logically, but correctly. In his clearly structured world, where every action has a cause and effect, this right occupies an undefined place. It doesn't fit neatly into the columns of expenses and income, risks and benefits. It simply is. He watches her chest rise and fall gently with the rhythm of sleep. She trusts him so much that she fell asleep in his presence, in the house of a man she doesn't know. It's stupidity on her part, or instinct. Instinct that tells her it's safe here. He's unfamiliar with the feeling of being someone's safe haven. Usually, his presence signifies the opposite. It signifies difficulties, negotiations, calculations, boundaries. But not the quiet of sleep by the fireplace. This can't go on. Sleeping sitting up is bad for your back, and it will be cold when the fire goes out. He stands up. His movements are smooth, silent. He walks over to the sofa and looks at her. He needs to move her to the guest room. There's no point in waking her. She's too deeply asleep, and it would only cause unnecessary stress. He carefully leans down. First, he removes the empty mug from her lap and places it on the table. Then, slowly, very carefully, he slides one arm under her bent knees and the other under her back and shoulders. He braces himself for her to wake from the touch, from the change in position. But she only sighs softly in her sleep and instinctively turns her head, pressing her cheek against his shoulder as he lifts her. She's lighter than he expected, or perhaps he's stronger. He holds her firmly, but not tightly, trying to keep the position comfortable. Her arm hangs limply, and he carefully presses it against her body, keeping it out of the way. He carries her down the dark hallway to the guest wing. His steps are firm and confident. He opens the door to a room he rarely uses. Inside, it's clean, cool, and dark. He turns on the light with a flick of his wrist. The dim light from the sconce illuminates a large bed with a gray bedspread. He approaches the bed and, just as slowly, with the same care, lowers her onto the mattress. Her head softly touches the pillow. She stirs, mutters something inaudible, but doesn't wake up. Her body finds a comfortable position on her side. Jin stands next to her for a few seconds, making sure she won't wake up. Then he leans over and pulls the blanket over her, covering her up to her shoulders. He adjusts the hem so it doesn't press against her face. He looks at the sleeping figure in his guest room. Alien life is now breathing beneath his roof, invading his privacy. But somehow, this intrusion doesn't feel threatening. It feels natural, as if a random element has suddenly and quietly clicked into place in his system, a place he hadn't suspected existed. He walks to the door, turns off the light, and quietly exits, leaving the door ajar. He returns to the living room and extinguishes the fake fire in the fireplace. The house is once again plunged into its familiar, perfect silence. But something about this silence has changed now. Jin doesn't go to bed. He goes into his office at the other end of the house. It's the same austere room, a large dark wood desk, a chair, a computer with its screen off, and a shelf full of documents in identical folders. He sits down in the chair but doesn't turn on the light. Only the dim streetlight outside illuminates the room with a faint bluish glow. He sits motionless and replays the evening in his head, point by point, as he always does. Point 1. A woman in a car. Risk. Unknown factor. Potential threat. Risk assessed as low in real time. Confirmed. No threat. Point 2. Her story. Plausible. Check later if necessary. For now, it can be taken at face value. Point 3. Her behavior. Frightened, but not hysterical. Then grateful. Then calm. No demands, no attempts to rummage through things or ask personal questions. She accepted the rules of his space. Point 4. His actions. They were logical. Take her to a safe place. Provide shelter. He could have stopped there, but he went further. Cocoa, conversation, sleep monitoring, physical contact during transfer. The last point stands out. It wasn't necessary. It was an action that went beyond basic security and logic. It was a gesture, not intended by the system. He thinks about her face when she smiled, about how she mentioned the mess on her desk, about how she slept, completely entrusted to the surroundings. She doesn't know who he is. She doesn't know what he does. She saw only the car, the house, the order, and that was enough to make her feel safe. This fact worries him, because it's an illusion. The security she felt was built on her ignorance. If she knew, she wouldn't sleep so peacefully. She wouldn't fall asleep at all. He gets up and goes to the window. The rain has stopped. The reflections of the streetlights lie on the wet asphalt of the courtyard. Everything is clean, precise, empty. His world. A world that today was invaded by the alien smell of wet clothes, the sound of someone else's breath by the fireplace, the ghost of someone else's smile. She'll leave in the morning. The system will return to normal. This incident will be closed. But somehow, the idea of the morning, of him simply opening the car door and driving her to the metro, seems too simple, incomplete. As if the equation hasn't been fully solved, he pushes the thought away. Feelings are poor guides. In the morning, he'll act rationally, as always. Consciousness returns to Jessie slowly. She doesn't understand where she is. She opens her eyes and sees not her ceiling, with the crack near the light fixture, but a smooth white surface. She's not lying on her old mattress, but on something very large and firm. Memory comes flooding back. Rain, headlights, a black car, calm eyes in the mirror, a big dark house, Coco, a fire in the fireplace, and then nothing. She sat up in bed. She was wearing the same clothes as yesterday, only wrinkled. Jeans, a t-shirt. A soft gray bedspread lay over her. She was in someone else's room, in his house. She looks around. The room is spacious, almost empty. A wardrobe, a chest of drawers, a chair by the window. Everything is in neutral tones. Nothing personal, like a room in a nice but soulless hotel. She gets up. Her body is a little stiff, but she slept well. Deeply, without dreams. She hasn't had such a restful sleep in a long time. The feeling of fear has completely disappeared. Only a slight awkwardness from the situation remains. She goes to the window and pulls back the curtain. Outside is a neat garden with light-colored gravel paths, a few coniferous trees, and a tall fence. Everything is wet from the rain, but the sun is already breaking through the clouds. Silence. She remembers the last moments before sleep. Warmth, his calm face, and nothing more. How did she end up in bed? Did he carry her? The thought doesn't evoke fear, but a vague surprise and shame? No, not shame. Something else. He didn't wake her. He simply carried her. He took care of her. She needs to find him, thank him, and understand what will happen next. Jessie leaves the room. The hallway is quiet and bright. The floor is warm under her bare feet, presumably heated. She follows the sound. A quiet, barely audible rustling. She steps into the spacious living room they were in yesterday. Now, in the daylight, the room looks different. Minimalistic, expensive but not cozy. Too much air and space. The scent draws her further. It's the smell of butter, eggs, something toasted and delicious. She passes through the living room and sees the open doorway to the kitchen. Gene stands at the counter. He's wearing dark sweatpants and a simple gray t-shirt. He's barefoot. His appearance is so at odds with yesterday's image of a man in a suit driving a luxury car that Jessie freezes for a second. He's cooking. There's a frying pan on one burner, a small sauté pan on the other. He's stirring something in the pan with a spatula. His movements are precise and economical. "Good morning," he says. His voice is a little hoarse with the morning. "Good morning," Jessie replies, pausing in the doorway. I overslept." "It was necessary," he says simply, turning back to the frying pan. "Hungry? I'm making an omelet." "Yes, thank you." She nods. She's not very hungry, but it seems rude to refuse. And it smells really good. She doesn't dare enter the kitchen completely. She just stands there, watching him deftly flip the omelet, then remove it to a plate next to the toast. "Coffee? Tea?" he asks without turning around. "Coffee, please. If it's not too much trouble." "No trouble." He places a second plate of omelet and toast on the table, then sets down knives and forks. Then he pours coffee from a French press into 2 cups. The whole thing takes less than a minute. "Sit down," he says, and sits down at the table himself. Jesse finally steps forward and sits down opposite him. The table is simple and neat. There are plates, cups, a small vase of soy sauce. She looks at her omelet. It's perfect even, golden brown. "You're a good cook," she remarks. "It's a basic skill," Jean shrugs. "Predictability. You always know what you're eating." He begins to eat. Jesse picks up a fork too. They eat breakfast in silence, but the morning silence is different. Not heavy, just quiet. It's broken only by the clatter of forks on plates and sips of coffee. He finishes first and pushes his plate away. He looks at her. "How are you feeling?" he asks. "Good," she answers honestly. "I slept well, thank you, and for what you endured. I don't remember how I ended up in bed. You were sleeping soundly. There was no point in waking you." He pauses and picks up his cup. "After breakfast, I'll take you home. Give me the address." Jessie puts down her fork. She looks at him, at his calm, determined face. The equation he'd solved in his head is complete. The incident is over. Time to return to normal life. But she suddenly realizes she doesn't want this. She doesn't want it to just end. She doesn't want him to become just a memory of a strange night. This feeling is stronger than logic, stronger than the rules of decency. She looks at her hands on the table, then looks up at him. "What if I don't want to leave?" she says quietly but clearly. Jessie's words hang in the kitchen air, sharp and clear, like the sound of breaking glass. The ticking of the clock on the wall suddenly seems deafeningly loud. Jin doesn't move. His face remains still, but his eyes are working rapidly, almost invisible. He looks at her as if she's just spoken a foreign language. His fingers, wrapped around his coffee cup, freeze. He doesn't blink. 3, 4, 5 seconds of absolute silence pass. He clearly wasn't expecting this. All his calculations, all his logical plans for the morning, were shattered by one simple phrase. "Repeat," he says finally. His voice is low, emotionless, but it conveys a demand for confirmation. Jessie feels a chill run down her spine, but she doesn't look away. She's already said it. It's too late to back out. "I said I don't want to leave." "Not yet." Jin slowly places his cup on the table. The sound of porcelain on wood is clear and firm. "Explain," he demands. One word. Jessie takes a deep breath. She collects her thoughts, looking straight at him. "Yesterday, I was running down the street and I was scared. I was scared of that guy, scared of the dark, scared of what might happen. I got into your car, and within 5 minutes, the fear started to go away. Not right away, but it went away. Then we came here. And here I'm not scared at all. Nothing. I slept better than I've slept in months. I woke up and realized I felt safe, real. Not because there's a high fence, but because it's quiet and orderly, and because you didn't do anything wrong. You just helped. I have nowhere to rush now, and I don't want to go back to where that feeling isn't there." She says all this without taking her eyes off him. She's not flirting, not playing around. She's simply laying out the truth as it is. Her voice trembles slightly with tension, but her words are clear. Jean listens. His brows are slightly drawn together. He crosses his arms over his chest and leans back in his chair. His posture is closed, defensive. "You don't know what you're asking," he says coldly. "You don't know me. You don't know the life I lead. You saw the car and the clean house. This is the cover, not the book." "Then tell me," Jessie retorts. "Tell me why I should leave. Give me reasons. Logical ones." He chuckles. Briefly, silently. Something heavy appears in his eyes. "Reasons? Good. My life is unpredictable. People who come to me do not come for cocoa. I have business meetings that cannot be disrupted. I require complete control of the situation. A stranger is a variable, a risk. You might see something, or hear something, and that will create problems. For both you and me. I won't poke my nose into other people's business," Jessie says quickly. "I'll just be here, in the guest room. I don't have to come out when you have these meetings." "That's naive," he cuts you off sharply. "You're an architect. You live in a world of lines and calculations. Mine is made up of intangible things. Agreements, obligations, sometimes pressure. Sometimes chaos bursts into this world, and I have to extinguish it. You have no idea what you're talking about. You want to stay in a quiet, safe place. But this place could cease to be quiet at any moment. And then safety would become conditional." He doesn't say this to intimidate. He speaks like someone stating the weather. It might rain, take an umbrella. Only in his case, rain has different consequences. Jessie doesn't turn away. His words don't frighten her. Perhaps because she can still feel the warm floor under the table, see the sunlight in the window, and sense the remnants of that very calm she speaks of. You said yesterday that order is a system for saving energy, she reminds him, and chaos is what you extinguish. I'm not asking you to change the system. I'm asking to give me a temporary place in it. As an exception, I will not be chaos. I will sit quietly in my room, working on my drawings. I will abide by your rules, whatever they are. If you say don't go out between 6 and 8, I won't go out. If you say don't ask questions, I won't ask. You gave me refuge for one night. I ask you to extend it, for an indefinite but short period, for as long as I need it. She pauses, gathering her courage. You're afraid I'll be a problem. I promise I won't be. You're afraid I'll see something. I'll only look at my papers. You're afraid of the risk. I'm not. Because the risk out there, on the street, is greater for me now. Jin looks at her with a long, intense gaze. He scans her face, searching for traces of lies, hysteria, or calculation. He sees only stubborn determination and the same vulnerable frankness that made him step on the gas yesterday. He sighs. He sounds tired. He looks away out the window, toward his garden, toward his predictable system that he's just asked to admit a living, breathing exception to. 3 days, he says sharply, turning to face her. No more. This isn't a hotel. This is a trial period. Jay-Z opens her mouth, but he holds up a hand, stopping her. You listen and remember. Rule 1. Your zone is the living room, the kitchen, your room, and the bathroom next to it. The study, the left wing of the house, the basement are off limits. Never. Okay? Rule 2. I can have visitors. When visitors come, you are in your room. The door is locked. You do not come out until I say so. You do not go near the windows facing the main entrance. Understood. Rule 3. You do not take your phone to take pictures of anything in or outside the house. You do not take notes on my activities. You are not to discuss this address or me with anyone. Not on the phone, not in messages. I won't tell anyone. Rule 4. You tell me your needs. If you need food, paper for drawing, anything, you tell me. You do not wander around the house looking for it yourself. Agreed. Rule 5. If at any time I say your probationary period is over, you pack your things without further ado, and I will take you wherever you say. No discussion. Jesse nods after each point. His terms are tough, but fair. They are the price for her safety. I agree to all of them, she says firmly. Then there is one last question. Jean leans forward, resting her elbows on the table. Why do you want this? For real. Not a sense of security. What do you get out of it? Jesse considers. An honest question requires an honest answer. A break? She says finally. I'm going through a difficult time right now. Graduation, job search, pressure. It's all piled up. And yesterday's incident with that guy was the last straw. I need a few days to just stop being afraid, to come to my senses. I can't do it in my chaos. But here I can. I think I can think clearly again. It's a practical reason. Jean looks at her, and a shadow of understanding appears in his gaze. Her reason isn't emotional. It's almost businesslike. She needs a resource, peace, and his house can provide that resource. 3 days, he repeats, standing up. We start now. Clear your plate. Then I'll show you where everything is within the permitted zone. After breakfast, Jean fulfills his promise. He shows Jessie around the house, or rather, the part of it she's allowed to. The kitchen, the spacious bathroom next to her bedroom, the living room. Everything looks as if no one really lives here. No forgotten books, no traces of personal habits, just perfect order. And here, Jessie points to the glass door in the living room, leading to the garden. The garden is in the permitted area. Jean nods. But only this area, in front of the house. Beyond the path, around the bend, it's not. He opens the door. The damp, cool air smells of pine needles and wet earth. They step out onto a wooden deck, and then down the steps to a gravel path. The garden is tended with Japanese meticulousness. Rocks of varying sizes are arranged in a precise pattern. Low bushes are perfectly trimmed, and even the gravel underfoot lies smoothly, without a single weed. Everything exudes control. Jessie walks slowly, her sneakers crunching softly on the gravel. She glances around, and Jean walks beside her, his hands in his pants pockets. He remains silent, watching her reaction. It's very peaceful, she says finally. Nothing out of place. Even the birds don't seem to be making any noise. There aren't many of them here, he notes. There's nowhere for them to nest. The bushes are too low. She smiles. For her, it's a minus. For him, it's just a fact, part of the system. They reach a small pond with black water. Several large carp swim in it. Their movements are slow, hypnotic. Do you walk here often? She asks. Every morning. Exactly 15 minutes. It helps me structure my thoughts before the day begins. She nods, picturing him. Always at the same time, always on the same route. Predictability. And today you're walking with me. Does that disrupt the schedule? Today is an exception, he says, and there's a slight, barely perceptible dryness in his voice. But I've timed it. Jessie stifles a giggle. She leans over the pond, watching the fish. The water reflects the sky and her own face. She feels his gaze on her. Not heavy, but simply present. She is a new, unaccounted element in his landscape, for now static. They return to the terrace. Jin is about to say something, but at that moment, his phone vibrates quietly, but insistently in his pocket. He takes it out and looks at the screen. His face instantly changes. The muscles around his mouth tense. His gaze becomes sharp and focused. His entire appearance, which had just been relatively relaxed, becomes taut and ready for action. Excuse me, I need to answer this, he says in a voice that has no hint of the intonation from a moment ago. It's a flat, businesslike tone. He moves to the far edge of the terrace, turning his back. Jessie remains standing by the door, hesitant to go inside and unwilling to eavesdrop. Speak, she hears him say. Then he says very little. Mostly, he listens. His answers are brief. Understood. How much? That's not up for discussion. Tomorrow at 10. No lateness. His posture conveys authority and impatience. He's not asking. He's stating. His voice is quiet, but every syllable is honed like a blade. This isn't the man who drank cocoa with her. This is the one who quells chaos. Jessie turns away, pretending to examine the wooden lattice of the terrace. She feels uneasy. She's an accidental witness to something real, the very thing he warned about. The conversation ends quickly. Jin pockets the phone and turns around. His face is under control again, but the tension in the corners of his eyes remains. Do you need to work? Jessie asks. Yes. I have some work to do this afternoon. You'll be in your room. It's not a question, but a reminder of the rule. I remember, she nods. I was just thinking of working on my drawings. All I need is a table and a chair. There's a desk in your room, he says. I'll bring you everything you need. An hour later, Jessie is sitting at the spacious desk in the guest room. Jean has brought her a stack of blank A3 paper, a set of pencils, an eraser, and rulers, all new, seemingly just bought. Her phone is lying nearby, but she doesn't use it, mindful of the rules. She tries to concentrate on her calculations, but her thoughts return to the morning call, to his changed face, to how easily he switched from being the owner showing her the garden to being, what? A boss? A negotiator? Someone giving orders? She goes into the kitchen for water. Jin is already there. He's standing at the table, quickly flipping through some documents on his tablet. He's wearing dark pants and a shirt again, but no jacket. He's at work again. There's water in the fridge. Glasses are in the top cabinet on the left, he says, without looking up from the screen. Thank you. She pours herself some water and drinks. The silence stretches. She doesn't want to break his concentration, but curiosity is gnawing at her. Jin, she begins cautiously. He looks up at her. That man, from the bar, do you think he might have remembered your license plate number? The question popped out unexpectedly, even for her. She hadn't planned to ask it, but it was spinning around in her head. Jean puts the tablet down. He looks at her appraisingly. Unlikely, he replies. It was raining, it was dark, you got in the car, and we drove away quickly. His attention was on you, not the number. But even if he remembered it, it wouldn't do any good. Why? Because the number isn't linked to anything that could be easily found. And even if he somehow figured out who the car belonged to, he won't get in here, and he won't try. He says this with such absolute cold certainty that Jessie believes him implicitly. Can you check it? Find out who he is? I can, Jean says simply, but I won't. If he never shows up in your life again, there's no point. If he does, then yes. Right now, it's an unnecessary step. He picks up the tablet again. The conversation is over. Her curiosity has run up against his pragmatism. He sees no point in hypotheses without confirmation. She, however, wants to close the gestalt, to understand the extent of the threat. For him, a threat is something that happens here and now. Yesterday's threat has already been neutralized. The day passes quietly. Jessie immerses herself in work. The desk is comfortable, the silence absolute. She finds herself thinking that her thoughts have truly become clearer. The absence of external chaos calms her mind. She goes into the living room for a quick cup of tea and sees Gene, now wearing a jacket, quickly walk toward the door. He nods at her but doesn't stop. A minute later, the sound of his car's engine can be heard, driving away from the house. She's alone, in a big, quiet, empty house. It should be scary, but it's not. The feeling of safety she spoke of is still there. It's seeped into the walls. She explores the house within the permitted limits. She notices that the books on the shelf are mostly about history, economics, and architecture, which surprises her. There are no fiction books. She notices that the kitchen is crumb-free. The dishes were washed and put away immediately after breakfast. She studies his habits through indirect signs, his return in 3 hours, his precise, quick steps, a slight frown of concern between his brows, which fades when he sees her at the living room table, finishing a sketch. "Everything okay?" he asks, taking off his jacket. "Yes, everything is fine. Are you finished?" "For today, yes." He studies her. He sees how she's settled into her assigned space. He sees the sheets of paper spread out on the table, the cup of cold tea. She hasn't created her usual chaos here, but she has left traces of her presence. And this doesn't irritate him. He simply notices it, like a new parameter. They dine together, on a simple meal he prepares, rice and steamed fish. Conversation during the meal is brief, about innocuous matters, but yesterday's caution is gone. There's a habit. He notices that she's left-handed. She notices that he doesn't drink alcohol and always places his utensils parallel to each other on his plate when he finishes eating. It didn't rain that night. After dinner, Jessie was back in the living room, checking her calculations. Gene was in his chair, reading something on his tablet. The fire in the fireplace was burning again, casting the same shadows. But things are different. Only a day has passed, but each other's presence is no longer a surprise. It has become a fact. Jessie puts down her pencil and stretches. She looks at Gene. He feels her gaze and looks up. "That's it?" he asks. "For now, yes." "My head is spinning." She pauses. "Thank you again. For the table. The paper. For the opportunity to focus. Were you productive?" "Yes, more than in the last week." He nods. It sounds like approval. "I have a meeting here tomorrow morning," he says in a businesslike tone. "In the office. It will last about an hour. You remember the rules." "I remember." "The room. The door is closed. Don't go near the windows." "Right. After that, I'll be free." He says free, and it sounds strange. Free from what? From his own affairs? Or maybe for something else? "And after the meeting, will we be able to come out into the garden again?" Jessie asks. "If you want." He looks at her, and something like faint interest flickers in his eyes. "I only showed you part of it. There's also a corner with maples. They'll start turning yellow soon." He suggested himself, not as a mandatory part of the program, but as an option. She grasps the difference. "I'd like to see it." "Okay," he says, returning to his tablet. Silence envelops them again, but now it's warm, almost homely. The fear and awkwardness of the first evening have melted away. What remains are two strange halves of an unfamiliar whole, beginning to adjust to each other's rhythm. Later, when Jessie is already heading to her room, she stops in the doorway. "Jean?" "Yes?" "These 3 days. Do they start this morning? Or last night?" He looks at her, and his lips form that subtle, almost invisible smile again. "Since last night," he says. "But we can discuss it." She nods, smiling back, and closes the door behind her. Jean is left alone in the living room. He extinguishes the fireplace and turns off the light, but he doesn't go into the study. He stands by the huge window, looking out onto the dark garden. The thoughts he'd been pushing away during the day are returning. He's not thinking about tomorrow's meeting. He's thinking about how tomorrow, after the meeting, he'll go with her to the garden to show her the maples. This wasn't planned. It happened spontaneously. As an exception, he thought about her question about the 3 days. She was already thinking about how to extend them, and he didn't dismiss the possibility outright. He said, "We can discuss it." His system, fine-tuned over the years, malfunctioned. A variable named Jessie had crept into it. It even changed his thoughts, which now return not only to balance sheets and obligations, but also to questions about whether there's enough paper for the drawings and whether the maple trees are beautiful in early autumn. Jessie can't sleep in her room. She lies there, staring into the darkness. She's not thinking about the guy from the bar. She's thinking about the owner of this house, about his reserve, which turns into care, about his strength, which gives her peace, about his world, which she was allowed to glimpse for just 3 days. But after 3 days, she doesn't want to leave. And she saw it in his eyes. He understands it. They both look toward their uncertain future, and they both know it will never be the same. The downpour has ended. Something new has begun. They don't yet know what it is, but they can no longer pretend it doesn't exist. Day 2 didn't start as planned. Jean's plan called for silence, focus, and control. Instead, at 7 in the morning, he heard quiet but confident footsteps in the kitchen. He emerged from the bedroom, already dressed for the upcoming meeting in a dark suit without a tie. In the kitchen, Jessie was busy at the stove. She found a frying pan, eggs, and vegetables. Coffee was already on the table in his favorite press. He'd taught her how to use it yesterday. She turned around when she heard his footsteps. She was wearing her own jeans and t-shirt, but she looked rested and collected. "Good morning. I thought, since you have an important meeting, you should have a proper breakfast. Poached eggs and grilled vegetables. Is that okay?" He looked at her, at the pan, at the steaming coffee. His morning routine included a cup of espresso he made himself and 10 minutes of complete silence before leaving or starting work. Not an omelet, not the smell of roasting peppers, not the presence of another person trying to do something pleasant. "You didn't have to do this," he said, approaching the table. "I know, I wanted to. Consider it rent. Or an attempt to be a helpful guest." He sat down, watching silently as she deftly transferred the eggs to a plate and garnished them with strips of pepper and zucchini. She set the plate in front of him and poured coffee. "Do I need to work in my room for the entire meeting today?" she asked, sitting down opposite him with her own plate. "Yes, from the moment the gate bell rings until I come for you. Even if you hear voices in the hallway, your door is to be closed." "Closed and locked?" she clarified. "Not necessarily. Closed is enough. No one but me will enter your room. That's the rule." "Good." She ate with gusto, and he couldn't help but follow her example. The breakfast was good. Too homey. Too normal for such a morning. "After the meeting," he said, putting down his fork, "if everything goes smoothly, we can go out into the garden. I'll show you the maples." "I'll be waiting," she answered simply. The gate bell rang at precisely 9:30. Jean, watching the cameras on the screen in his office, saw a black SUV. He pressed the button and the gate opened. He adjusted his shirt cuffs and stepped out into the courtyard to greet his guest. Jessie, sitting at her desk with the blueprints, heard the low hum of an engine, then the sound of a car door opening and closing. Men's voices, muffled by distance and the walls. 2 or 3, footsteps retreating toward the office. Then silence. She stood up and went to the window. It looked out onto the back of the garden, that forbidden area. No one was in sight. Following the rule, she didn't go to the window overlooking the driveway. Instead, she sat on the floor, leaning against the wall next to the door, and listened. Nothing. The house was as quiet as a tomb. The conversation in the office was taking place in raised voices. Jean was sitting at his desk, his face a stony mask. In front of him stood a large man in an expensive but tasteless suit, his face red with indignation. "These are not the terms, Jean. We agreed on something else. We agreed that you would fulfill your part by Friday. You didn't. The terms have changed." Jean's voice was icy and even. He did not raise his tone. This only made it more frightening. "I need 2 more days. You have until tomorrow. Until noon. Not a minute later. And the percentage is now not 20, but 25. The man muttered something, clenching his fists. The 2 accompanying him were silent, looking at the floor. They knew who was in charge here. "This is robbery. These are the consequences," Jean corrected. He stood up slowly, his movements smooth, like those of a large predator. "You may disagree. Then we cease cooperation. With all the consequences. The choice is yours." A heavy silence fell over the room. The man breathed heavily, then nodded, broken. "Okay. See you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow." Jin sat back down, his gaze already sliding over the documents on the table, making it clear that the audience was over. Today, that threshold was almost breached. He thought of Jessie, sitting behind the closed door. She was a meter away from this world, unaware of how dirty it could be. He eased the tension from his shoulders, straightened his back, and walked back. His expression became neutral again. He knocked on the door of her room. "It's over. You can come out." The door opened. She stepped out, studying his face. She saw the residual tension at the corners of his lips, the cold clarity in his eyes. "Is everything all right?" she asked quietly. "It's decided," he replied, which in his vocabulary was a synonym for yes. Are you ready for a walk? They walked out into the garden, but this time he led her down a different path, leading to the left of the house, around a bend in the bamboo thicket. Here, the garden became less formal. Bushes and tall grasses appeared, and then a small clearing opened up, surrounded by 5 maple trees. Their leaves were just beginning to change from green to golden yellow and crimson. Sunlight filtered through the foliage, creating a play of light and shadow. There they are, Jean said, stopping. Jessie paused, looking at the trees. Then she turned to him. They're beautiful. Why didn't you show them to me yesterday? Because this is my place, he answered honestly. I rarely bring anyone here. Then why now? He looked at her, then at the trees. Because you made breakfast this morning. And you didn't ask any questions after the meeting. You follow the rules. This deserves an exception. They strolled in silence. He talked about maple varieties and how he cared for them. She listened, asking questions about gardening, and he was surprised to discover that he enjoyed explaining. He enjoyed seeing her view his garden not as a museum piece, but as something alive. That evening, they found themselves back in the living room, but this time, Jessie had brought her plans. She laid them out on the low table. Can I show you? She asked. You said you had some architecture books? He nodded and moved closer. She was explaining the concept for the community center she was designing. She talked about light, space, and the flow of people. He listened intently, asking precise, practical questions about loads, materials, and logistics. His mind, accustomed to complex diagrams and calculations, grasped the gist of it instantly. There's a missing emergency exit here, he said, pointing to one of the sketches. And the load calculation for this beam is way too optimistic. We need to check. Jessie looked at him with growing amazement. You understand this stuff? I understand systems, he said. And a building is a system. If one element fails, the whole thing collapses. They talked until late in the evening. He found a building code reference book in his library and showed her the relevant sections. She took notes, her face aglow with fascination. At some point, their fingers brushed again over a drawing. Neither of them pulled their hands away. Night. Jean was back in his office. But today, he wasn't analyzing risks. He was staring at his tablet, where a website with job openings at leading architectural firms was open over a city map. He was searching for names, connections, making a mental note of who he could call. He was breaking his cardinal rule, keeping things personal. But helping someone advance their career isn't a business. It's an investment. An investment in what? In her future? In her speedy departure? Or in giving her the choice to stay or leave? Not out of fear, but of her own free will? He couldn't give himself a clear answer. He only knew he wanted to see her achieve her goals, see her implement those plans that lay on the living room table. Jessie couldn't sleep in her room for another reason. Her brain, rested and clear, was working at full capacity. Not only did she see the solution to her thesis, but she also understood one thing clearly. She was no longer afraid. Not of that guy, not of deadlines, not of the future. Fear dissolved in the quiet confidence of this house and the calm strength of the man who lived in it. She thought of his hand resting next to hers on the drawing, of how he'd said, "my place," pointing to the maple trees. She was there, with him, the third day. In the morning, she made breakfast again. He took it for granted. At the table, he said, "Today is the last day of our agreement." "I know," she answered without looking at him. "What are you planning?" She looked up at him. "I have a proposal, new rules, for a new trial period." He frowned. "What?" "I'm not just becoming a guest. I'm becoming part of the system, on a temporary basis. I'm responsible for morning breakfasts and evening tea. I maintain order in my area and in the kitchen. In exchange, I get the right to be here, to work, and sometimes to walk by the maples, and to ask questions, not about your affairs, but about the books in your library, about the garden, about why you chose this particular type of bamboo. And how long is this new agreement?" he asked, hiding his surprise under the guise of a businesslike conversation. "Indefinite. Until either I finish my degree and find a job, or you decide I'm disrupting the system's balance. Either way, 2 weeks' notice is required." He leaned back in his chair, assessing her. She was negotiating, clearly, understanding his language, rules, conditions, deadlines. She wasn't asking for favors. She was offering a deal, an equal one, in her opinion. "What about security?" he asked. "Visitors, calls, unexpected events? The rules still apply. A room, a closed door. No questions. I'm background, until you decide otherwise." He was silent for a long time, sipping his coffee. Then he put down his cup. One amendment is required. What? You may ask any questions, even about my affairs, if you wish, but I reserve the right not to answer. She froze. This was more than she had hoped. Why? Because a system based on silence is less stable than a system based on selective transparency. It is better to give the opportunity to ask than to guess what is being kept silent about. She understood. It was a risk on his part, but a calculated one. I accept the amendment, she said. Thus began their new, indefinite time together. The boundaries remained, but within them, space emerged. Space for morning coffee and conversations about the weather, for shared dinners where he would sometimes share innocuous stories from his life, about a trip to Japan, about choosing stones for the garden. She would talk about her family, about her dream of building not just a building, but a place where people could feel good. He started bringing her the professional magazines he ordered for her. One evening, he placed a business card in front of her. It's the man from Kim and Partners. He's expecting you to call about an internship. Tell him I sent you. Jessie took the card with trembling fingers. This was her chance. Thank you. How can I? No need, he interrupted her. It's logical. Your talent shouldn't go to waste. A week passed. 2. The maple leaves had turned completely crimson. Jessie called the agency and received an invitation for an interview. She returned home. And yes, that word sometimes slipped into her thoughts now. Excited. And he, seeing her face, simply said, I knew it would be like this. And for the first time, he placed his hand on her shoulder. For a moment. A warm, heavy, reassuring touch. One night, he was awakened by a security alarm. Not from the gate, but from the perimeter. Someone was trying to climb the fence in the far corner of the garden. He was on his feet in an instant and quietly descended to the basement, to the room with the monitors. A figure flickered on the screen. Not a professional. Drunk. Incompetent. Jean exited through the secret door into the garden. He dealt with the situation quickly and quietly. 10 minutes later, he returned to the house, without making any noise, without any unnecessary movements. He went to check on Jessie. She was asleep, hearing nothing. That morning at breakfast, he said, There will be gardeners working in the garden today. It might be noisy. It's fine, she replied. I need to prepare for the interview. She didn't ask why the gardeners hadn't arrived on their usual day. He didn't explain. The system worked. He provided security. She enjoyed its fruits without going into details. Selective transparency. The interview went well. She was offered the position. She returned and told him everything in detail over dinner, which she had prepared herself. Seafood pasta. He listened, nodded, and she saw something akin to pride in his eyes. When do I have to go back to work? He asked. In 2 weeks. There was a pause, the one in which unspoken words hung. So we have 2 weeks, he said. Yes, she answered quietly. Jean, Not now, he interrupted softly. Let's finish dinner first. Later, as they drank tea by the fireplace, he spoke first. You will build beautiful buildings. I am sure of it. And what will happen to our system? She asked, hesitating to look at him. He put down his cup. The system can evolve. It doesn't have to be static. You taught me that. Me? You were an unplanned variable, but instead of destroying everything, you integrated, and the system became better, more flexible. So there is room for me? And after 2 weeks? He looked at her dark, hopeful eyes, at her hands clutching the cup, at the same girl from the rainy night who had sought salvation and found something more. There is always room, he said. The question is how to define it. You will work in the city. You cannot live here permanently. It is impractical. And what if I want to come back here every day? Not as a guest. How? She didn't finish. As part of the system on a permanent basis, he finished for her. It's a major change. It requires a review of all safety protocols, routines, everything. But is it possible? He fell silent for a long time. He looked at the fire as if searching for an answer in it. Anything is possible, he finally said, if you want it badly enough, and if you calculate the risks correctly. It will take time. We have 2 weeks to begin the calculations, she said, and there was a firm note in her voice, the same one that had once made him step on the gas. He looked at her, and something clear and open finally appeared in his stern, reserved face. Not a smile, but a decision. Then we'll start tomorrow, Jean said, with point 1, how to ensure a safe route from downtown here after midnight if necessary. She laughed. A clear, cool autumn had taken its place, and in the house where impeccable order reigned, a new, living, warm element had appeared. And the system, instead of rejecting it, was preparing to restructure itself to incorporate it. Forever.